Andrea was 22 when her mother called and said she didn't want to be a mother anymore. In that one phone call, Andrea became a parent to her 8-year-old sister, Adrienne. She raised her through her 20s, working 2 or 3 jobs at a time just to be on her sister's schedule. And just when life started to feel steady, Adrienne was diagnosed with a rare, aggressive cancer at 15 years old. This is Andrea's story of loving someone so completely that it reshaped her and finding a new North Star after losing her.
She's being wheeled in for the CAT scan, and she says, "Hey, sissy," which is what she called me. "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I was like, bite your tongue. And she's laughing, I'm laughing, everyone's laughing except for the nurse, but we're laughing. And it was the ER doctor who came out and told us that she had tumors in her liver and lungs.
You're listening to the Life Shift Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Gilhooly. This show is built around one simple idea, that sometimes a single moment can change how we see everything. Each week, I talk with someone about the moment that shifted their life and how they learned to live differently after it. These are not stories about having it all figured out. They are stories about what it looks like to keep going once the story changes. Thank you for being here. Here's today's story. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Life Shift Podcast. I am here with Andrea. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, Matt. How are you?
Doing well. Trying to survive the summer heat here in Florida. I know you're trying to survive the summer heat where you are as well.
Yes, in Alabama. Very similar heat.
Yes. And, every year I talk about it and every year I don't do anything about it. So someday I'll add to my 35 moves in my life and do another one and move to a colder climate. Anyway, thank you for wanting to be a part of the Life Shift Podcast and just coming on to share, one of your probably many life shift moments that have kind of created lines in the sand for you in your life, a before and after version. And all of it really comes from my own experience of losing my mom when I was 8. She was killed in a motorcycle accident. And it was literally, my dad sat me down. I was visiting him. He lived in a different state. I lived with my mom full time. So I was visiting my dad. He sat me down and he had to tell me probably the hardest thing he's ever had to tell anyone out loud. And it was like at that moment, when you had, I stopped dreaming about the future because all the dreams that I had about the future were no longer possible in my small 8-year-old mind. And it's really, it took me to like 40 years old where I realized I've never actually had a dream, not a dream sleeping, but a dream of something big or hopeful. It was just next step. And so I left that day. So I say all that to say that now I get to kind of heal through hearing other people's stories with the goal of other people listening and maybe feeling less alone in their circumstance. So really appreciative of you wanting to just be part of this ride.
Oh, well, I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Before we get started, can you tell us who you are in 2026? How do you show up in the world? How do you identify these days?
Well, I'm a sister, I'm a wife, I'm a friend, I'm a lover. I am a storyteller. I think in my heart, I'm really, more than anything, I'm a storyteller because I'm a writer and a speaker, patient advocate, but all of that revolves around storytelling. And it's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, I mean, the power of storytelling, we know, I knew it on the surface. I knew okay, yes, power, that makes sense. Power of storytelling. But when I get to have these conversations, sometimes with people sharing that part of their story for the first time, you can see what happens when you say it out loud for the first time. The power that it kind of gives you. For me, everything felt really scary in my head. And then when I started telling it, it was okay, things are starting to make a little bit more sense now and kind of, put things into perspective for me and allowed me to unpack other things. So kudos to you for sharing story with the world. Do you find it as fulfilling on your side?
I do. I mean, I share different stories. It's not the same one, but my dad was an incredible storyteller and my mom had just a wicked sense of humor and a sharp wit. So I grew up around that, even though they didn't stay together very long, but I grew up around two parents that really valued humor and storytelling. And so I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Have you always been this way, like professionally, or is it something that you've kind of gone into because of your story?
Oh, great question. I think I was going to go this direction, and then I just had all of these bizarre detours because I actually went to college for journalism and didn't know at the time like it was a big deal that I got into the school of journalism at USC. Go Trojans! And then my roommate, my freshman year of college, said something, and she said, "Why are you a journalism major if you hate the news so much?" And I was like, "Oh, good point." And an 18-year-old me was like, "I think I'll change my major." And so I did. And so I changed my major to humanities with an emphasis in theaters. I ended up being a theater kid. I probably should have stayed on the journalism path, but I later discovered through theater, like I ended up writing a play, and this is when I still lived in LA, directing, producing it. And that's when I realized, wow, I like the process of creation. I don't like the process of interpreting someone else's words. I like the process of actually writing the story myself. And so, like I said, lots of detours along the way.
Yeah, well, that's what life does sometimes.
Yes,
Sometimes it's not so good, but I guess I look back at my story. I'm like, well, I wouldn't wish parts of my story on anyone. I'm sure there are certain parts of your story that you wouldn't wish on other people. And the hard part for me is like liking where I am now and knowing that I wouldn't be where I am now had I not had those certain detours in my life. So that's a really hard thing to put out loud and be like, people are like, would you change the past if you could? And you're like, I want to say yes, but I also don't know who I would be.
I
Like I
agree.
wouldn't be this me.
I agree 100%. My husband and I talk about this a lot. If I had not decided to move back to Birmingham, this is where I live now, not for much longer, but where I live now. But I went to high school here, and my mother's from Alabama. And so I moved back here over 10 years ago. Had I not moved here, I never would have met him. And and even he didn't live here. He moved here to be with me. But so yeah, you don't know because you see all those shows, and when you change the past, it changes the future.
Yeah. Well, there's some things I would like to change, but I don't know where we're going to be. So perhaps you can paint the picture of who you were leading up to the main pivotal moment that we're going to center today's conversation around, fully understanding that as humans, we have lots of them, some bigger than others, but whatever you want to kind of center today's conversation around, I'd love to hear that before version of you.
Yeah, so I was 22. I had graduated from USC early, actually, and I was living in LA, had a great apartment, didn't have a lot of money, had no job stability, was living with a raging alcoholic, and didn't really know what that meant. And my 8-year-old sister, Adrienne, came to visit me for what was supposed to be a 2-week Christmas vacation. And our mother had a drug problem. I did not really understand that. I started to get it in high school, like this is not normal. But she was so high functioning, and she was a nurse, and so she had easy access to drugs. And then, but that before that Christmas, she had actually lost her nursing license for shooting up morphine at work. And up until that point, she had managed, and like I said, she was high functioning. She'd been able to hold a job. But then when she lost her nursing license, just like life went downhill. Like it was just a disaster. And I could see things unraveling, but I never, ever expected my sister to come live with me. So my sister comes out the day after Christmas. Our mother calls, says she doesn't want to be a mother anymore. And I should preface this by saying that we have the same mother, but different fathers. My sister's father died in a car accident before she was born. So unfortunately, she didn't know him in this lifetime. And so when my mom said that, I was like, wait, what? But I also could see what was happening with my sister, and it was not going well, and I was really concerned. And so I just said to our mother, I said, well, if I take her now, I'm not going to give her back. And she said, okay. And so I got temporary physical custody right then. And that was December of 94. And then eventually I went to court and sued her for full legal custody and won. So I raised my sister all through my 20s.
Wow.
And so that was like probably the first big shift, if you
Sure.
will.
Yeah, especially as a 20-year-old, I think
Yeah.
the things that you're focused on at 20 don't feel like they would be raising an 8-year-old or helping to raise a teenager eventually,
Yes.
you
I
know,
was
and
blissfully naive. Do you know what I
well,
mean? Like
hey, that's
I
probably
didn't
a
know.
good thing.
It was a great thing. I didn't know. I didn't know.
Exactly.
And also like I was in a relationship that, if he personally wasn't going to hurt me, I would have gotten hurt in a drunk driving accident because he had multiple ones. And so he was a dangerous person to be around. And I didn't think much of my own safety, but I thought a lot about her safety. And so I got out of that relationship
Mm,
not long after I got custody of my sister. And so she really helped me make better choices.
yeah. Well, that responsibility does kind of help us grow up in other ways as well. I'm thinking about that call that is probably, hopefully, a rare call that people get from their mother
Yeah.
telling them that they no longer want to be a mother. Was this like, did you have a good relationship with her moving through your childhood and whatnot? Was this like a wild shocker because she was a great mom and now this?
We had a good relationship. I was very close to her, but it was very codependent. Again, a word I didn't know growing up. I'm the oldest, and so I was very much parenticized. So my parents divorced when I was 10, and my mom made me her best friend. She made me in charge of the house. By the time I was in my teens, I was paying all the bills, balancing the checkbook. I mean, I did everything for her. And I actually used to say that to her. I always talked back because I had so much responsibility. And I would just say, when I go off to college, you're going to miss me because I'm essentially your housewife, except I'm also going to a really intense performing arts high school with long hours. And I also have a part-time job. And you don't realize everything I do for you. And my mom, to her credit, like a year after I left for college, I mean, I always visited, but after I'd gone away, she said, you were right. She goes, I really did not fully understand because by the time I got a driver's license, I took my sister to school. I picked her up. I was the one that the preschool called when my sister got in trouble at preschool. They didn't call my mom. They called me at high school to come pick her up. So when you don't know anything else,
Yeah.
that's your norm. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
I had never even heard the word parenticize. I hope I'm saying it right. I had never even heard that word
Mm-hmm.
until 10 years ago. And perhaps because it wasn't invented until then, but I'm not sure. But she made me like the adult in the
Right.
relationship and her equal in the relationship. And that was really hard. And there were lots of things in high school that I didn't get to do because I had to stay home and take care of my baby sister. And it was interesting. I think at my 10 or 20-year high school reunion, I was seeing all these photos and I was like, with people I know. And I went to a very small high school and I was like, where was I? And someone said, oh, you were taking care of your sister. You couldn't come. And so everyone knew. So we had a really good relationship, but it was very dysfunctional.
Yeah. Did you harbor like any kind of resentment? I feel like there would be some teenage angst that would come out, or did you fully embrace like this is just this is just what I have to do?
I didn't at the time, but when I got to college, I felt freedom. Like I was like, I'm free. And I had an amazing college experience and I went against my mother's wishes, my father's wishes, my counselor's wishes. Like everyone said, don't go to LA, don't go to this school. You'll never succeed. You're coming from a small high school in Birmingham, Alabama, da 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 da. And I had the time of my life. I had a
Yeah.
great time.
Yeah. Well, maybe because of the situation in your
Yeah.
teens that you were just like, screw it, do
Yeah.
whatever I
Oh,
want.
yeah.
Yeah.
Had a great time.
Do you think this is going to be a really rude question? I think,
Yeah, go
but
for it.
hopefully. But do you think that you gravitated towards dysfunction, like that relationship that you were mentioning, that was
Yeah. Oh, yes.
because
Yeah.
of the situation that you were in growing up?
Yes. And when I was in that relationship and when I started to kind of piece together like, oh gosh, like he's an alcoholic. This is a problem. I went to a therapist. I remember first therapist I'd ever gone to. It only went 2 times. The first time was just your regular intake. The second time he like looks me in the eyes and he says, and I had had a relationship in college, my one serious college boyfriend, and he was abusive, and I had to get a restraining order against him, and he was a drinker as well. And so this therapist said to me, he goes, do you realize the connection between your mother, your college boyfriend, and the man you're living with now? And I said, what do you mean? Like I could not see it. And he just drew the map for me so beautifully. And I thanked him. I also told him he was going to have a very short career as a therapist because now I didn't need to come back. But I was so grateful because up until that moment, no one explained it to me. No one helped me understand what codependency was. No one helped me understand that I saw my college boyfriend differently than I saw the guy I was with. And especially I saw both of them differently than my mother, who was not a drinker at all. She just popped pills all the time. And so I'm so grateful. I don't know his name. He was at the West Side Clinic in LA and he was incredible. And I was like, oh, wow. And then I started attending Al-Anon meetings and started to kind of put all the pieces together.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, again, the power of story, someone else seeing your story and helping you tell yours or understand yours better. I only ask that. I think of my own experience and how I unknowingly gravitated to like legit every mother of my friends. Like I wanted to be like best friends with the mother of all of my friends. And then I got older and I was like, oh, that makes total sense. But at the time it was just like, yeah, every mother loves me kind of thing. And it was really my subconscious, like trying to find that feeling that all my teenage friends had at the time. I didn't know what that was like. So kind of feeling this is very similar. Our stories are totally different, but very similar. Kind of like what we gravitate towards is a product of like what we subconsciously understand as we're growing up. It's very,
I mean, that's what made me a good caregiver. It's what made me a good parent, And when you're a parent, parenting a child, that's great. But when you're the parent in a relationship with another adult and it's codependent, that's not healthy.
Yeah. So here you are in your 20s, you said you're now officially, I guess, a parent, right? Of your sister, where you had practice, you were in practice before, and now here you are. This is your full responsibility to do. What is life like as you navigate that? Because it's got to change you, right?
Yeah, it was really difficult. I didn't build a career in my 20s because I couldn't find a job that would allow me to be on her schedule. And so for a long period of time, for a few years, I took multiple part-time jobs. I think the most I had was 4 part-time jobs at one time, but it allowed me to take her to school, allowed me to pick her up from school, allowed me to be there if she had a school event. It allowed me to cook dinner for her. And then eventually I started teaching and started as a substitute teacher so I could be more on her schedule and have a more consistent schedule myself. But I still always had like 2 or 3 jobs at any given time. And then if I could, I would take her to work with me, depending on what the job was. But it was hard. It was very, very difficult. We did not have any extra money to do anything. Money was always tight. And so that part of it was hard, but being her parent, that was incredibly rewarding. It was.
I could see how that is, but also at the same time, on the flip side, as rewarding and beautiful as that relationship can be, you're also, dare I say, sacrificing what your life was gonna be. On the trajectory that you were on before. Was it like a no-brainer that you were going to do this and take care of your sister?
There was no one else. There was no one else. And I found out later my mom had tested this out with other people. Like she had actually tried other people before me and I didn't know that. And everybody else said no. And I think the reason she waited to ask me was because she knew that I wouldn't give her back. And I told her that. I said, I'm not going to give her back. And
did she try?
Yeah, she did. She came back about 10 months later and she said, I've got my life together now. And I said, okay, well, did you go to rehab? No. Is your nursing license reinstated? No. How are you earning a living? She was doing private nursing without a license. And her clients didn't know she didn't have a license. And that's how she was making a living. And I said, and where are you living? Oh, I'm living at the house with, the man who's the patient. I'm like, that's not a place to raise a child. I said, and you haven't gotten help. and you won't admit you have a problem. And that's when we ended up eventually going to court.
Well, I mean, kudos to you for being the adult in the situation
Yeah.
and really, it's hard to stand up to your parent. I mean, it's someone that you're taught to love, like you're taught to take care of, and not that you have to, but you're taught that way, and you stood up to her and you took care, you did what was best for your sister. Yeah, but I think it's very noble of you. I don't know, that sounds cheesy, but like to offer up your life to take care of someone else that you love. It's a really big thing in your 20s. So kudos to you
Thank you.
for stepping up to do that.
I,
How did it go ahead?
oh, I was going to say, I found out later, my sister said she didn't want to grow up to be like me. And that really hurt, It's like, what? And then I realized why. I realized why. I was like, oh, because I always put myself last. And that's why she didn't want to have to sacrifice the way that I did. And
Yeah.
so then I understood.
Yeah, that's a tough one on the surface to hear something
Mm-hmm.
like that, but to understand that she saw you for what you were doing and sacrificing for her. I mean, that's pretty, but I'm pretty. It's very nice to hear that part of it, but at the same time, I would imagine that there are some parts where you're like, "Damn, I missed that," but you also had that "Damn, I missed that" during your teen years. So, how does your story progress as you're, you know, putting your life somewhat on hold as you're raising another child, which is your sister?
Yeah, so she had a rough time in middle school and became suicidal, and
Mm,
I got her into therapy, and we got so fortunate, so fortunate that it feels like the universe just found the perfect therapist at the perfect time. Still in touch with her to this day, and really saved her life. And she, she had a whole suicide plan. I found it. It was rough. It was rough. Middle school was really rough, and then she got over that. She started high school, and it was a beautiful thing to see her start high school, where she just finally embraced who she was and stopped caring about what other people thought, and found that she was kind of popular among sort of everyone. Everyone, she didn't fit into one particular category, and she was finally okay with that. She was a 4.0 student. She was taking, AP courses. I mean, she was so smart. And then a month after her 15th birthday, just 3 weeks shy of finishing her first year of high school, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And it was quick. It was like I came home from work. At that time I had taken a semi-permanent teaching job, and I came home, and we had a rule in our house that she always had to do her homework first. So I was used to walking in the door and seeing her at the kitchen table doing her homework. And on that day, she was on the living room floor, curled up in pain, saying she couldn't breathe and clutching her right side and crying. And this was a kid who did not cry. I mean, she was tough, and volunteering to go to see her doctor. And it was like, whoa, okay. And so we went to our pediatrician. He didn't like what he saw. He sent us to the only hospital in Burbank, California, to their local ER. They did a CAT scan. And to give you an idea of her very, very dry, funny sense of humor, she's being wheeled in for the CAT scan, and she says, "Hey, sissy," which is what she called me. "Hey, sissy, watch it be cancer." And I was like, "Oh, bite your tongue." And she's laughing, I'm laughing, everyone's laughing except for the nurse, but we're laughing. And it was the ER doctor who came out and told us that she had tumors in her liver and lungs. He said he wouldn't look at her, wouldn't say her name. And then he told us that they were not equipped to handle the situation because they didn't see pediatric patients. So they had already arranged for a transfer by ambulance to Children's Hospital Los Angeles. And that all happened in the span of under 6 hours. And so we were in an ambulance by 9 o'clock going to Children's Hospital. And that was day one of her very short 147-day cancer journey.
I mean, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. The swiftness of finding out. It's like you
Yeah.
almost didn't,
It was like
like
whiplash.
it's like
Yeah.
whiplash, but also
Yeah.
like you don't even have time to process it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it probably took a while to start to process like this is really happening, or
It
What was that
happened
like?
really fast in
Okay.
terms of getting an actual diagnosis. So for that, I'm grateful. And I think they moved very really fast because she was young,
Yeah.
because nothing made sense. All of her initial blood work was normal. And so she had a biopsy within 2 days, which is kind of unheard of. And once they saw the tissue under a microscope, they knew it was stage 4 hepatocellular carcinoma, or primary liver cancer, and it had already spread to her lungs. And it was fast. She never went back to school in person. She did finish the school year, and she even started her sophomore year, but she didn't go back to school in person.
And for you, what was that like for you? Because I mean, I can't imagine what it's like for a 15-year-old to kind of have to face this, especially with what she had gone through in middle school. I think there's a whole
Yeah,
other layer that comes with it. But for you, that someone you've put all of your love into this
yeah.
child who, and I can't imagine how it wrecks you, but you also probably want to feel a certain way around her. Like, what was that like for you?
I lived in what I call a healthy state of denial, because
Okay.
if I if it wasn't I was not in denial about her illness. The proof was there. There was no question, and we did get a second opinion. But I was in denial that this would actually kill her, because there was no way I would have been able to function every single day if I thought that I was going to lose her. And I would say I was pretty much like that up until like a day before she died. I mean, I really was. I couldn't even wrap my whole mind around it. But I also had this idea initially that I would somehow go back to work. And so, like, I'm faxing in lesson plans. It was a Wednesday, and I was like, we'll get through this week, and then I'll be back on Monday, and we'll figure something out. And I don't know what I thought, but that did not happen. So I ended up leaving my job to take care of her full time.
Well, I mean, again, a beautiful part of a horrible story, right? I think a lot of us would have been like, I'm going to go back to work and normalcy, because that's what we were craving. Everything feels chaotic and uncontrollable. And you're like, oh, well, that's the thing I know. I can lean into the work part and that will distract me for a little bit. But,
Well, and you need the money. I mean,
well,
it was
I
like,
guess money is part of
yeah,
it. Well,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what it
that's
was for me. It was like, I have to earn a living. So.
right. And that's even more challenging. How were you? I don't want to ask about your finances. How were you able to put yourself in that spot where you could be her full-time caretaker and see her through this journey? Because I'm sure that meant a lot to her.
I was able to do it because my dad, who had no biological relationship to her, but treated her like the only granddaughter he ever had, my dad offered to help take care of us. And I was in a healthy relationship at that point with the only father figure she ever had. And he continued working full time and kept his job, but they gave him loads of flexibility. Like, if he had to drop everything and go to the hospital, he did. And so they were very, very understanding during that time. But if my father had not offered, I don't know what we would have done. We were also just so lucky that the school did a fundraiser. I had done a lot of theater that I had acted at, a show I directed, and they did a fundraiser. We were just really, really fortunate that all these people sort of showed up for us. And it's funny when stuff like that happens, because it's not funny, haha, but you really find out who your friends are. And you're going to be surprised every time, because the people you think that are going to be there may not be, and then these people that you never would have expected come out of the woodwork and just show up in incredible ways. And then we were also fortunate that there was a loophole in the California law. So I didn't have health insurance for myself. I was 28 when she was diagnosed, but I had health insurance for her because of a loophole in the California law. Read the fine print, people. And that's why I never adopted her. If I had adopted her, she would have lost her health insurance. And so that's why I never adopted my sister.
Okay. Well, I mean, it sounds like people really showed up for you. Was it hard for you to accept that help and those people showing up for you?
No, but the first two, she was in the hospital for 2 weeks, and then we came home and then started this new normal life. And at first, everybody showed up. Everybody, like every people who barely knew her showed up. And she even said, like, I'm popular because I'm sick now. Like
Mm.
she called it. I mean, she was a straight shooter. And what was really hard for me was, like I said, our mom was a nurse, and I saw, and our mom worked in hospitals and nursing homes, and I saw what happened when people started to get worse. And my mom would talk about it a lot too, how families would stop showing up and disappear, and patients would be asking for them. And that was the hardest part for me, was from the very beginning, I knew all these people were not going to be around at the end. And I was right. And I didn't want to be right about that, but I mean, it sucked. And in September, and this started in middle of May, in September, when she was going back to school but being homeschooled and working with the school district, she said, what happened to all these people? Because I had this sort of close-knit group of friends. None of them had kids yet, but they were kind of like her. They like to say they were her aunts and uncles, and that, one day she was going to babysit for them. And they were all in their 20s as well. And they weren't friends with each other necessarily, but they were all sort of friends with me, my partner in the time, and he had a young son from a previous relationship. So, and she said, send them an email, like tell them I may not be in the hospital as often, but I'm still here. And, and I did. I sent that email and had her read it first before I sent it. But it sucked to have to send that email to say, hey, guys, she misses you, and show up, stop by, say hello, pick up the phone and call her. And but that's what happens. Yeah.
It's so hard because I can see both sides of the person that doesn't know what to do and they can't fix it. So they don't know what to do. They just freeze and they pretend it's not happening, kind of like the little bit of that denial piece that comes into it. But at the same time, you're totally right. They're still here.
Yeah.
Like your sister was still here and she was doing what she needed to do to make it through the day, and seeing the people that she loved or enjoyed company from would be beautiful. So anyone listening now, if you know anyone that's going through anything, just show up or reach out and say, hey, just thinking about you. Anything you need? Like, it's as simple as that.
It really is that simple. And
because you weren't looking for a solve. You weren't looking.
No. Yeah, nobody could fix it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, and the other thing that I learned was that a lot of times people want to help, but they don't know how to help. And right, they can't fix the problem, right? And they want to help. And so I really quickly learned, wait a minute. I asked someone, I said, hey, if I give you a list, could you go grocery shopping? Yes, great. Would you mind putting gas in my car? Great. So there were little things like that were super helpful that people were willing to do. And then there were other people who were like I had a friend of mine, he didn't live in the area, but like he kept wanting to like have dinners delivered to our house, but he was doing it from another country. And so between the time difference and also the fact that like at any given moment we could be in the ER, it never worked out. And I finally had to say to him, like, I really appreciate what you're doing. And I said, but this is not helping us. And I'm getting stressed thinking about some dinner delivery. I said, I really appreciate it, but that's just not what we need right now, but I appreciate you trying to help. And so, yeah, I think that's, unfortunately, the onus is on the patient or the patient's loved one to say, this is what I need. And putting gas in my car may not seem like a big deal. Guess what? It's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
And we're just not trained for this on either side, to be the caretaker. We're not trained to be the sick one. We're not trained to be the friend or the family of people going through something. And so instead of leaning in, we turn away because we just don't, and we don't know how to ask for things. And, someone has to step up. It sounds like you were able to step up in some ways. Had you lost anyone before going through this experience with your sister? Like anyone close to you?
No.
Okay.
I mean, my grandfather died from lung cancer when I was 7, but no.
Yeah. And in my mind, it was always like when you were young, old people just die.
Your grandparents are supposed to die before you. Yes. That's the natural order of things. Yes.
So not only was this your first experience, like caretaking for someone in this way, I guess you were doing that as a teenager, but hopefully in more healthy of ways. I guess people are healthy living, but here you are, your sister's getting sicker, I'm imagining, through this period of time. So this is your first time kind of witnessing someone's journey through it, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'd seen it with, my mother, where the places she worked, I'd
Right.
seen it. But again, they were much
So
older people. I had not seen it with a young person. And yeah, it was really hard.
were there light moments in that period of time between you and your sister?
Oh yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. She was so funny. Like it was really strange. She never fully lost her hair. And I don't know if it's because, so the night before chemo, she was very conscious about looking for ways where she could take back some power and control. So the night before chemotherapy, she shaved her head into 4 mohawks and called it her quad hog. And it looked phenomenal. Like it looked amazing. And it was like, wow, you have a perfectly round head. We didn't know. And when her hair started to fall out, she actually pulled out a huge chunk, and there was this bald spot. She's like, oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. And so except for that one little spot, she never lost her hair follicles fully. So we had this incident where this was a couple months in, and she had purposely like shaved off the mohawks as some of the hair started coming out. But even her eyelashes, she didn't fully lose. As soon as she would lose an eyelash, another one would come back. Her eyebrows, she didn't fully lose. They were just thinning out a little bit. So she looked like someone who shaved her head. She didn't always look sick. And we were at a restaurant, her favorite restaurant, but she wasn't that hungry and she was trying hard to eat. And we were with two of my friends, and this waiter came over, and I could tell, or best boy, he had been eyeing her, like, and he was 19, 20, she's 15. And he comes over and he's like, it's like something out of a cartoon. He had a stack of dishes, a stack of plates. And he comes over and he's like, oh my God, like, I don't know what made you do it, but I can't believe you shaved your head. You're so beautiful. And he was so genuine and so earnest. And I could see this look in her face, like, I just can't deal with this today. And so, like, without missing a beat, and she was about to take like a sip of her soup, she just said, I have cancer, and just continue. And we all laughed. I mean, we laughed so hard. And I know it may sound mean, but you had to be there. And I thought he was going to drop every dish. And then she puts the spoon down and she's like, he won't be back. And he didn't come back at
Yeah.
all. He was gone. So, and then there were lots of moments like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as hard as it is, there has to be levity
It has to be.
I mean, because you're all still there, right? And
Yes.
you want to make the most of these things. And you come to this probably the worst experience you've ever gone through of losing her. And we don't have to go into the details there, but I would imagine it changes you as a person. Not only, raising her and this life that you probably didn't imagine for yourself in your 20s, and having this relationship, even closer relationship with your sister, but like, how does this experience of having her and then losing her, how does that change you as a human?
Oh gosh. Well, my partner at the time, and he was there the whole time. We did end up splitting up 2 years after she died, but he said he had never, and mind you, he's a parent. He had never seen anyone love someone the way I loved her. And 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 a lot of people said that about the two of us. Like, you would meet us and we would seem so different, initially, and then you would get to know us and we had so many similar qualities, and but we would go to the ends of the earth for each other. And I don't have that person anymore. It's just not the same. And I'll never have that person again. And talk about the most unique relationship of my life is, like, not only my sister but my child. And it's one of the reasons I chose not to have children of my own, although I found out later I probably couldn't have. That's for another podcast. But it's one of the reasons that I didn't have any biological children, because I was like, if I have it, I never had a burning desire, but I was like, if I do, I will always compare internally. I will never say anything externally. And that's not fair. That's really not fair. I feel so fortunate though, because most people don't get that, you know?
Mm-mm.
Most people
Yeah. And
don't love someone like that, and most people don't get that love back from that person.
Yeah, and the ability to see her through so many of those moments, those pivotal moments in, in her growing up, but also in one of the hardest times that she would ever experience, right? And for you to be there and celebrate is not the right word because obviously you're not, but like I had the beautiful opportunity to spend the last 96 hours with my grandmother, who basically became my mother, who we were best friends. If I dare to compare a relationship, like you and your sister child of that sounded really weird, but you know
Yeah,
what
I
I
know
mean.
what you meant. Yeah, yeah.
But my grandmother and I were probably that close. And
Oh,
having lost my mom the way I did, when my grandmother got sick, I was like, we're doing this right. And that's why I asked you that original question, if you had lost anyone, because I knew exactly, for me, selfishly, I knew exactly what I didn't want to do this time. And so I leaned into it, and it was hard, of course, hardest experience, but I knew I was going to have that last conversation. I was going to force it, whether she wanted to or not. We were going to clear the air if there was any air to clear. And she was going to go, and I was going to go with nothing left unsaid. And then I sat by her bedside for the last couple of days of her life. And I think it was devastatingly beautiful. Like, it was something where she was around when I took my first breath, and how lucky was I to be there when she moved on to whatever comes next for her.
well, it's an honor.
And
I
so,
was holding my
there's
sister. Yeah, when she
there's
died.
something.
Yeah.
It's weird to say that there's something beautiful about it, but in the darkest part of what you could experience, there is something so special about being there for them and for yourself. And would you say that you had a similar experience to that feeling, although probably heart wrenching?
I mean, I couldn't say it at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like at the time, but I can say now, like it it was an honor. It was a gift. If I had listened to the doctors, she would have died in the hospital, hooked up to a respirator, because she took this really dramatic turn for the worse, like really suddenly. And there was a 36-hour period where she was essentially unconscious, and they didn't know how to pull her out of it. And they were insisting that I hook her up to a respirator. And I said, nope, I'll sign a DNR. I'm not doing it. That's not what she would want. I know that without. And I said, I'm going to take her home. And they were doing everything to talk me out of it. They were like, she could die in the ambulance. I'm like, I accept that risk. And they said, well, then you have to go on hospice. I said, fine. And now at this point, I had been up 36 hours too, just surviving on Diet Coke at the time. And it was like 5 o'clock in the morning. And this hospice nurse walks in and introduces herself. And my sister at this point is like Sleeping Beauty, has not woken up and said a word. And I just draped my whole body over my sister. And I said, I don't care who the hell you are. I said, I'm taking my baby home. Make it happen. Like. And she later told me, and I wish I could find where she is today. I don't know. I'm not still in touch with her, but she later told me her nickname for me was Andrea, don't fuck with my family, Wilson, which is like the best nickname ever.
Yep.
And I own it. I love it. It's so true. But what was crazy was I knew she was still there. Like I knew she
Mm-hmm.
was still there. And so we signed the hospice papers. We're going to take her home. The doctors are like, she's going to die in the ambulance. I'm like, okay, got it. And they decide they're going to put a catheter in her. So everyone leaves the room. The doctors, everybody leaves. It's just me with two nurses. And they start to put a catheter in her. And by golly, this kid wakes right up and she's like, Sissy, make them stop. What are they doing? And the nurses look like they've seen a ghost. And she grabs her IV pole and she's like, man, I got to go to the bathroom. And I offered her help her. She's like, I don't want your help. She's like, and she like goes to the bathroom. She shuts the door. She comes back out. We put the covers back on. And the nurses are like, we need to let people in. And because my partner was outside, my friend and her husband, the doctors, and we let everybody in, and everybody's crying. And the doctor that pushed the hardest for me to put her on a respirator, I have never seen a doctor before or since silently weep. And he was weeping, weeping. And he just happened to be on call. He was not her regular doctor. And she looked around and she's like, what's all the fuss about? I was just dreaming. It was so funny. And
Yeah.
and I just looked at that doctor. I said, I told you she was still there and she's going to be at home. and she died 2 days later at home.
Hmm. I mean, as hard as that is, what a beautiful moment. Like it puts you, I mean, it warms my heart, like that you were able to have those moments and you advocated for her, and she was still herself in
Yes,
those
she was
moments,
100% herself. Yeah.
like, and it doesn't always go that way, and sometimes people just sit around forever and we don't know what to do, but sometimes you're able to have those last moments so close to the end. I don't know why I'm justifying any of this. I think it's such an interesting experience to watch someone die and to be a part of that journey. But I know what it's like on the other side of it. Did you lose yourself for a while? What was your grief journey like? Like,
Yeah.
how,
Yeah.
tell me a little bit
I
about that grief journey, because I know it's
I
different for everyone.
I heard you saying something on one of your podcasts to a guest, or maybe it was the guest, about just trying to make everybody else happy. And so for the first year after she died, that's what I did. I just pretended I was okay. And because I don't know, I was sort of my role, and in that friend group with, like I said, they weren't really friends with each other, but they were friends with me and my partner. And also his son was very young. His son was only 9. And so I just, that whole first year, I didn't grieve. And that was a mistake. And I tell people that now. It was a huge mistake. It just, if I had grieved sooner, people would have really understood, I think, the full impact. But everyone bought my act. They did. But people asked ridiculous things of me. My best friend's husband asked me to plan her surprise 30th birthday party less than 2 months after my sister died. That's ridiculous. I mean, it is absolutely ludicrous. I think he did it to distract me. I don't think he had any,
Yeah, probably
malicious intent. But why didn't I say no? I mean, God,
because you wanted to please other people. You didn't
yeah,
want to
I did.
lose anyone else.
I didn't want to lose. That's exactly it. I didn't want to lose anyone else.
That's what I
And
did.
yeah. And when I finally, that first year, that 1 year anniversary, when it finally hit me that this, that whole last year and a half wasn't a dream, and that I was never going to, have her back in this lifetime, I became extremely suicidal, and I just fell apart. Really, really just fell apart. I was still sort of functioning and working, but I was really going through the motions. And it was my partner who I didn't think paid attention most of the time, but I was really sad and he was really mad. So he became like a falling down drunk. Like he like
That was his
that
way of
was
doing it.
that was his way of grieving. And I just became like sadder and sadder and sadder every single day. And I ended up losing all my friends. So I was right about, not wanting to lose. That was a very astute observation that you made, that I was afraid of losing other people because I was afraid they didn't like sad Andrea. And I was 100% right, because they all fell away. And there was only one friendship that I purposely ended, and had the courage to have the conversation with the person to say, this is why I can't be friends with you anymore. But all those other people, they just fell away. They just disappeared. And some of them overnight.
As soon
And
as you started getting sad.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. As soon as I let the grief show. And it was devastating. It was not like losing my sister all over again, but it was a whole nother
It's like,
loss,
who am
because
I?
like my whole friend group was gone.
Yeah. Did you have to find yourself again? Like, did you feel like a different person? I know you had these suicidal feelings and didn't want to, I guess, exist anymore in,
Hmm.
in the way that you're moving through life. But did you feel like you had to reinvent yourself? Did you feel like you wanted to find that version of you again? Like,
I didn't know who I was if I wasn't her parent, because
yeah.
that mattered to me more than anything else. And yes, I had a job, and I was a working actress, and I was doing theater, and I had all these other things I was doing, but none of that mattered after she died. None of it. So yeah, I had to really start over.
Yeah. Before we go forward, I'm curious if you think about this. Do you think if you had actively grieved, like right after you lost your sister, do you think those friends would have, quote unquote accepted that version of you, that sad Andrea version of you, but maybe they didn't because it was a year later and they're like, what the hell, what's wrong? Why didn't you do this at first? I always think that because it took me 20 years to like stop that stupid pushing down the grief and trying to make sure no one else would leave situation.
Yeah.
And then I was sad, like, and people are like, what's your problem that you're like 30 something years old and your mom died when you were 8? Why are you sad about it now? And they just don't realize that like it stuffed this shit down for so long. So did you ever think about like if you had actively grieved, if those people would still be around?
I don't think most of them would.
Okay. Just uncomfortable for them.
Because Adrienne was a great connector of people. Like she was like the core. It wasn't me that was the core. It wasn't my partner who was the core. And the friends all kind of knew us from different, some of them were more my friends, some of them were more his friends, but they all came together around our kids because none of them had their own kids yet. And so that was sort of the central thing. Like they came to the kids' birthday parties, the holidays if they were in town. And Adrienne was just, and she was like that with people too. She was just this great sort of connector that everybody wanted to be in her orbit. And without her there, I think everybody felt really unmoored in many ways. So I don't think it was just not wanting to be around me. But I did have, it was interesting, my best friend from college, this was just a few years after Adrienne died, and she was one that lasted a little bit longer. She said, I don't know who you are anymore. Like you're going back to school and you're getting your master's degree. And I said, that's something I've always wanted to do. I was just going to do it after Adrienne graduated from college. She goes, well, I didn't know that. And she's like, you're becoming this like totally different person. I'm like, no, I'm still me. I'm just going to grad school now. That's all. Yeah, it was just a really bad time. I wish I grieved up front because then you would have then I would have really found out who my friends were.
Yeah.
So
it's all a mess. It's like we can't tell our own. I mean, we can't create our own grief timeline. You can't force it.
Yeah.
You needed to do what you needed to do.
And they all moved on with their lives, and that was really hard too. They were all starting to go into their 30s, and two of them had kids 4 weeks apart, less than a year after my sister died. And I was happy for them. I mean, I was genuinely happy. I was so happy for them, but it was still really hard.
Yeah. At the beginning of our conversation, you kind of mentioned, that you're a lover and you're a wife and, all these things. And you said it with pride and happiness. So there, in my mind, there's a space in between where you were lost and maybe you feel found now. Do you recall like was there a moment in which you were like, all right, we're moving into a new version, an up-leveled version or a different version after that grief period for you or during that grief period?
Well, I think, and I talk about this a lot when I speak, I think it's really important to have a North Star in your life. And when Adrienne came into my life, she became my North Star. And that got me all through my 20s. It got me through all the hard times. It got me through the times where I had $20 in my checking account, when my car was towed, like you name it, it didn't matter because I had her and she was my guiding light. And I'm not even sure she knew that until she was older. And then after she died, I was just so lost. And then when I started my nonprofit, which I only started because there wasn't a single other organization in the U.S. doing anything in primary liver cancer. And I could see how the trajectory, how bad it was going to get. And that became my new North Star. And now I'm in a different place in my life where that's shifting, and I can't really say much more than that because I don't know when this podcast is going to air, but now I'm shifting and my North Star has changed again. And so I tell people that a lot, that like, you have to find a new North Star if you lose a relationship or, maybe your children were the center of your world and now you're empty nesters, you have to find it. You have to have this purpose and it will change, if you're growing as a human being and expanding, then that will change throughout your life. And that's perfectly okay.
Yeah. Does it feel unsafe to find a new North Star after something like that for you?
No, something I've realized about myself is that because of my childhood, I really thrive in chaos. Like I really, really thrive in chaos. My mom used to tease me when I was a kid. I was super, super neat. My brother was a complete slob. I don't think anything's changed in that respect. I just saw him recently, and we're full brother and sister. We're only 3 years apart, and so we have the same parents. But my mom used to say that like she stopped coming in my room because I would know if she moved something 1 inch. And she was right. And it was, of course, it was my way of controlling my environment, right? The only place I could control was my room. But I do kind of thrive in chaos, and I'm going into this time in my life where lots of things are changing. Right before we, went live, I told you I'm getting ready to move, and I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited
That's
because
good.
I know what to do with chaos. Like it's when things are like super calm and normal that I'm like, wait a second, I'm not sure. And it was interesting. Years later, my sister's therapist, who, like I said, I'm still in touch with, who was there when my sister died, was right there with us the whole time. Years later, she told me, "Oh God, Andrea, your childhood was a shit show." And I was like, is that an official term, like from the
It's in the book.
DSM-5?
Yep.
Yeah, it's in the book. I was like, how come you never just told me that? She goes, I was a therapist at the time. I couldn't tell you. I'm retired now. I could tell you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those
Uh,
hard moments, though, set us up somehow
They do.
to survive things that other people feel like they couldn't. But you
They
know what?
do.
I've had so many conversations on this podcast about moments that, like myself, I couldn't imagine living through the next day after, what hearing their particular story. Yet somehow, all of us as humans, there's this resilience in us if we're lucky, because not everyone is lucky to have that resilience inside and people supporting them around them. But if we're lucky, like the things that we can go through as humans and come out possibly a newer version of ourselves that maybe some might say is even more evolved or better in certain ways is it's really remarkable considering the things that people go through. I mean, that could take you out. What you went through could take you out. Losing, when you see a parent lose a child in any age bracket, the parent always knows they shouldn't go first. Like that's
That's
just
right.
not how it should go.
No, it's not the natural order of
And
things at
so
all.
it sometimes it takes out certain generations, like, and they just can't move through their life differently. And you found a space where it sounds like you can honor Adrienne in what you're doing and celebrate her and who she was and what she brought to your life, but also find these new things to engage with in your life. Would you say that's fairly accurate?
Yeah. Yeah. And if I had not had the childhood I did when my parents were still married, and then after the divorce, and how they treated each other, and even they actually ended up separating me and my brother. So in our teenage years, my brother and I did not see each other. They split us. I like to say they split us like property. Like my mom took me and my dad took my brother, which was wildly like terrible, like horrible. But if that had not happened, there's no way I would have been equipped to raise an 8-year-old in my 20s, and there's no way I would have been able to manage her cancer diagnosis and go through that and fight for her at every turn. I wouldn't be that person, I wouldn't be who I am today if I had not gone through all those things. I don't wish them on anybody. I don't. But do I know, like, I'm one of the toughest people that I know? Yeah.
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 Makes obstacles seem a little less overwhelming
Yeah.
in the future, like
Yeah.
I can do hard things, I guess, is kind of
Yeah.
how I'm
And
thinking of
there's
it.
and it's not always obvious at the time. And I would never say this to someone who just lost their child or anything, but there's an opportunity in almost every obstacle.
Yeah.
Just sometimes doesn't present itself for a very long time.
Yeah. That would not land right after loss, I don't think.
No, and I would never say that to
So
anybody.
anyone listening,
Ever.
don't say that for
Yeah,
a
don't say
while.
that. I actually, my husband and his brother, my mother-in-law died a few weeks ago, and his brother said, if one more person says, I'm sorry for your loss. And I said, well, there are a lot worse things they could say. I said, but I feel you. I understand. I really do.
Again, we're not taught.
We're
We're not.
not. We are
It's
not.
uncomfortable.
Yeah. And I feel like we should be having these conversations really early, you know, because I saw just how unprepared my sister's friends were and her parents, you know, and their parents. I mean, it was just, I mean, one of her friends almost passed out, you know, at her funeral, and I'm like, where's her mom? And her mom had like disappeared because she just didn't want to deal.
Comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're not talking. I mean, we're not talking about it. Maybe we are more now. I think maybe in the last couple of years, people are talking about it more. And, I'm so appreciative of you sharing this story and letting me ask my weird questions about,
I
my
loved it.
own experience of grief and what a hot mess it was. But I've learned so much about like what I don't want to do again when it comes to
Yeah.
grief, and it's so much different
What
to
do you not want to do again?
all the things I did from age 8 to 28, just pushing it down, using it as an excuse, using it as a crutch. Anything that I won or did well was because my mom died and people felt bad for me. Everything that I did
Oh,
poorly on was because my mom was dead and I was just broken. So it was just a very big excuse for a lot of things, whether it was good or bad. And everything I did was out of fear that my dad was going to leave if I wasn't perfect. And so
man.
had I had someone that knew anything about grief in, the late 80s when she died,
Yeah.
maybe things would be different. But again, I wouldn't have learned so much. I wouldn't have had that experience with my grandmother when she got sick because I wouldn't have known better had my mom not died. So there's a lot of things that I'm grateful for from the journey, but things I don't want to do again, and
Right,
it's
right.
just
Yeah.
just how it goes. So I like to ask this silly, stupid question, but wondering if like who you are now, 2026, you bump into Andrea, who is navigating going back and forth through the hospital and living through that time period. Is there anything that you might want to whisper in her ear or tell her or be with her?
Have the death conversation because I didn't have that conversation with Adrienne. And she could have had it with me. She would have been able to do it. She was a prolific writer and she kept a journal and I was never allowed to read it. And I didn't. And I read it about a year after she died. I started going through and she had been journaling since she was 10, but she was really serious about it about a year before she got diagnosed. And so she actually journaled her entire story up and she was still journaling days before, like, sorry, 3 weeks before she died was her last entry. And reading through that, there was this very pivotal. I can't talk today,
Pivotal.
Matt.
It's
Thank
fine.
you. I'm like, I'm throwing in an extra syllable. There was this moment where after her fourth round of chemotherapy, I thought she was getting better because we were in and out of the hospital. She wasn't in any pain. Everything had gone smoothly. There were no hiccups. It was like 3 nights, less than 4 days. I mean, everything had gone perfectly. And I was like, this is a freaking miracle. And most importantly, she wasn't in pain and she felt good. And she knew in that moment, she wrote in her journal that she knew she was getting worse and that she was dying. And so she protected me. She knew and she didn't tell me. And then sure enough, like 2 weeks later, we got the news. We got after a scan, we got the news that things were much, much worse. And and so if I could go back, it would be like have the conversation with her because I think she wanted to have it with me and she just didn't know how to. She knew I couldn't handle it. Let's
Yeah,
put it that
she
way.
didn't want to hurt you more than you were
Yeah,
already hurting. And
yeah,
it's it's a hard conversation to have. It's a very hard conversation to have, but we need to have it because we're all going to die, and some of us
yes.
way too
I say
soon.
that.
But it's a commonality between all of us. We're all going to be born, and we're all going to die. So we always talk about birthdays. I mean, we
Yeah,
shouldn't celebrate the end conversation, but we should also talk about it. It's a reality. It's something that I've always thought about basically since I can remember because I was young and that was my first experience with it. So, but other people are so afraid of it. And so, yeah, if you're in a situation like Andrea is describing right now and you're listening, like have the conversation. It's not going to be easy, but
yeah,
just, just have it because you won't regret having it.
yeah.
You
I'm
know,
really proud of my
you may,
husband because he had a conversation with his
yeah,
mom.
that's
Yeah,
great. Well, thank you for having this conversation and kind of leaning into whatever question comes out of my mind. And I appreciate that because it's real and these are real conversations that we should be having. So if someone's listening and some part of your story resonated with them, or they're going through something similar, or they just want to share a little bit of their story, like what's the best way to find you, get in your orbit, like reach out to you? Tell us more.
The best way to reach me is through my website, AndreaWilsonWoods.com. You can also read my book, Better Off Bald, A Life in 147 Days. So it's a medical memoir, and it's about raising and losing my sister. And it covers that 7-year period in my life, but through the lens of her 147-day cancer journey. And then to find out more about my nonprofit, go to bluefairy.org. That's BLUEFAERY.org. And I hope you don't need us. I like to say that, but if you or a loved one has been diagnosed with primary liver cancer, we have lots of free resources, education, even a community just for you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, thank you for what you're doing for the world in that way. I think it's really important, and people don't know where to go when they hit moments like this, and to have resources like that is so important. I hope you have a contact form on your website, because I really do encourage people to share their stories. So hopefully there's one there that people can reach out to you and be like, hey, when you said this, this is what I want. Because as we said at the beginning, power in story. When we can share our story, something changes within us. And when we get to witness other people's stories or reflect on other people's stories, there's a lot of change that can happen. So I really appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me, Matt. It's been great.
And thank you everyone for listening. I will be back in a few days with a brand new episode of Life Shift Podcast. Thanks again. Thank you for listening to the Life Shift Podcast. If you want to learn more, go to www.thelifeshiftpodcast.com. There you can check out all the different episodes. You can check out the blog, some of the reviews for the podcast, and the Life Shift Journal. Links are there so you can purchase your own copy, whether in digital or print format. Thanks again.